Will fall.
Okay, are we live? Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Earth Live Lessons. I am streaming all the way from India, and I hope this connection is holding. If anyone can see this, is it streaming? My name is Sandesh Kadur. I'm a National Geographic Explorer and a wildlife filmmaker. I've just finished filming a program called Wildcats of India. So if you get a chance to watch it on television or streaming, please do. It's all about one of my favorite animals, the big cats. And it's not just about big cats. I also love the small cats and small cats that many of you may never have heard about. Things like the fishing cat, the rusty spotted cat, and all the cool little things. I never knew that India has more species of cats than any other country in the world. Let's see if anyone can guess how many species we actually have. Yeah, so how did I get started? Well, let's see. A big cat got my entire journey started. Um, I'm right now in Bangalore, India. This is where I grew up. This is where I spend a lot of my time. I'm here in lockdown right now, and I've set up on my balcony, and we're just trying to film bats coming to that tree back there. But it's been raining all evening, so not too much filming happening. So I got started when I was still a teenager, and I used to bicycle out to a place not too far from here, about half an hour away. And on a full moon night, used to go and sit up on a tree. And the first time I ever did this, I saw a leopard walking right under my feet. And that was it. That was the moment I decided I want to spend the rest of my life doing just this. Um, Watch animals as they go about their daily life, and getting into wildlife filmmaking. Well, I think I've been able to live my dream doing exactly what I want to be doing. And that's what I spend the majority of my time now. And I don't think there's a better job I could have asked for. Uh, I mean, there is that old saying that goes, uh, you if you want to do a job, yeah, if your hobby becomes a job, you never have to do a day's work in your life. But that's absolutely not true. Because when your hobby becomes your job, you're going to be working all the time. Like right now, I'm sitting here on the porch looking for bats. But let's talk about cats tonight. Yeah. What's your favorite big cat and why? We've got a question from Molly. Favorite big cat. Well, I do love the I do love the snow leopards, and that's one of the big cats that I've spent a lot of my time in the mountains, in the Himalaya, in the snow. It's one of those areas that I have a love-hate relationship. I love being there, but I hate the cold. It's so miserably cold, and then you realize how well adapted the snow leopard is to that mountain environment, and how we just don't belong there. And that's why the mountains are so sparsely populated, and the landscape where snow leopards inhabit are probably some of the least populated places on the planet. But working with them, trying to find them, and trying to film them has probably been one of my most challenging of the big cats. And that's probably why I like them that much. Um, and it's not just the snow leopard. There's another cat, which is a small cat that lives there. It's a tiny little cat about the size of a house cat. It's called the Palace's cat. Now, this cat is probably only about this big. It looks like Garfield. It's always grumpy looking. And that's the other cat that's found where the snow leopards live. And it's also highly adapted to that environment. I mean, that area gets to about minus 30 in the winter, and these cats just go about their daily life as if, it's normal. They also have the densest fur amongst any of the cats, a double layer of fur that keeps them well insulated. So they are very well adapted. So big cats. Well, I mean, how long did it take to film Big Cat Week? Well, what I was working on is a special three-part series called Wild Cats of India. We started the project in 2017 and we finished it late last year in August. So it took us about a good 2 years to film all these species and bring it, finish the edit and bring it to your television. So these projects do take a long time. So 2 years to film 10 species of cats. Well, that was actually a rapid fire shooting session. And trying to find these in the wild was one of the toughest assignments I've ever had. Now I know why very few people actually go out to make films on small cats. They are incredibly um, unpredictable. You just don't know where they are. They're shy, they're elusive, and to try to film them, you need to become a cat yourself. You need to become nocturnal. You need to be able to be stealthy, wait in ambush for long periods of time. And that's actually some of the things I just love doing, setting up a hide, sitting for long periods of time in one place. I remember trying to film a tiger coming to a rhino carcass. It took me 7 days before I could film the tiger. So, locked in place for a very long period of time. Actually, even for BBC's Planet Earth 2, I was trying to film a tiger that only came in after about 7 days. So, being in lockdown isn't very different. I mean, I'm kind of used to being in lockdown, uh, but it's usually not on my balcony. It's usually out in the wild someplace. Another question from Henry: how do you go about planning to film such elusive species like the Pallas's cat? Well, that's a very good question. Normally, I spend a lot of my time working with researchers and looking over scientific papers and trying to find information, in depth information about these animals. But some cats, like the Pallas's cat, it's so rarely seen, so little scientific work has ever been done about them. And so then you go to the local people, and then you go to the places where these cats are found, and you interview or sit and talk to the local people and ask them about the cat. And this time I went there with photographs of the cat and showed it around to the people. But for the Pallas's cat, even the local people had no idea. The cat may live amongst them, but seeing one is it's like worse than a needle in a haystack. I mean, it's this tiny cat in this huge mountain range. It's impossible to see them as they. I mean, they're camouflaged. They go around, laying low to the ground behind rocks and things. And they once they go into their den, they may not come out for several days. So we also use camera traps, and with camera traps and um, long lenses and spotters, we go to areas where we look for what the animals eat. For example, the Pallas's cat eats small rodents, voles. So we find places where there's plenty of voles and then go hang out where the prey is, because you know that where the prey is, the predator has to come in at some point or the other. And that's what we normally do. For the big cats, for example, tigers and leopards, Summer is a very good time to find them in the wild, and sitting or camping out by a watering hole is a good place because the tigers they need to come in to drink, and they also come in there to hunt. So tigers, of course, they have a very thick coat, having originated in the cool northern climates up in Russia and those places, Siberia. The heat is almost intolerable for them. So in the summer, these tigers can come in and just lay in the water for the entire day sometimes. And that's great to watch, just to be able to see them sleeping by a water hole, laying in the water during the hottest parts of the day. And one of the amazing things is to see a tiger go from dead sleep to deadly hunt mode in the snap of a finger. As soon as they hear a cheetal deer or a sambar deer coming to the water, they can go from sleep to hunt mode like that. And I've seen that happen many times. Yeah. Ooh, we are getting some much more complicated questions here. So let me just jump back to how I got started, and you heard the part where how I got started. But once I was hooked, and when I realized I want to spend the rest of my life just filming animals or observing animals in the wild, that's when failure hit. I failed in high school, and then I had nothing more to do. It was like the end of the road, so to speak. And that's what got me exiled to the other side of the world, Brownsville, Texas. And I started university there, and then I ended up going to the cloud forests of Mexico in the US. I mean, in the US Mexico border, the Rio Grande Valley. That played a very important part in my career as a wildlife filmmaker. I joined the Science Foundation, and the Gorga Science Foundation took me down to the cloud forests of Mexico. I started to lead birding tours, and we had a biology station there. Washed a lot of dishes at that camp. I'm an expert dishwasher, and that then led to bigger and better things. My university professor, Lawrence Loff, he saw that I was interested in photography and got me my first video camera and sent me on a journey back to India to film the Western Ghats mountain range. And and that's where I did my first documentary about the Sahyadris. And that went on to become a documentary for the BBC's Natural World called Mountains of the Monsoon. So, Mountains of the Monsoon was my first big broadcast documentary. And and ever since then, it's been a lot of work with the BBC and National Geographic, and there's really been no looking back. It's just been one project leading to the other, and working on all sorts of cool animals. Most recently, we worked on a very small lizard called a sarada, a fan-throated lizard. If you watch One Planet, Seven Worlds on the BBC, you'll see this amazing sequence of these lizards just boom fighting in midair. So that was a very fun shoot over 2 years that we did. And before that was a shoot on Our Planet. It was in the forest episode where this enormous bird called the great hornbill flies in midair, and casque butts, their beaks clasp in midair, and they kind of have a beautiful ballet. Um, Much of this had never been seen or filmed before, and that's what really drives me to do what I do, is looking for species and behavior that has never really been filmed or photographed before. And that's what keeps me in the field and keeps me motivated. And right now, in lockdown mode, I'm always scouring the internet trying to look for cool stories like the ones I've just told you. And there's a lot of work that we have to do with the wildlife researchers who work in the field, and they're the ones who really have the stories, and we come about to help them tell the stories of the animals that they study. So it's very important to collaborate. Collaboration is absolute key. How do you plan your story or shoots in pre-production production? Okay. Yeah, that's a tough question because, like I've said earlier, it's very hard to plan these shoots around these elusive animals. Sometimes we just go out there on the basis of one vague photograph and then just hope for the best. And sometimes we go with a lot of in-depth information, um, uh, with scientific papers, people having studied these animals in detail. And with that, we know what to expect, what kind of behavior to see. For example, king cobras. I worked with the top experts in the field, with Romulus Whitaker, the snake man of India, and Gauri Shankar, both of who are amazing king cobra experts here in the Western Ghats. And this is the world's longest venomous snake. So it's a species not to be taken too lightly. So it's also important to work with the people who know these animals best, and with them, you can plan out the shoot, you can plan out the type of shots you need to get, and they most of the times know where these animals are and the kind of behavior to expect at different times of the year. For example, right now, April 10th or 9th, this is when we would be filming king cobras in combat. This time of the year, that's where I would be filming in the Western Ghats, where these king cobras are found. And around this time of the year, the males go into this amazing combat behavior, just intertwined on each other. They rarely, if ever, bite one another, but it's more like a like a like a thumb war that these snakes have, and each one trying to pin the other one down, and then you know which one has won. So if I wasn't locked down in at home in Bangalore, that's where I would be filming king cobras in the wild. But unfortunately, this year that's not the case. Have I ever filmed Asiatic lions in gear, and are they difficult to find? So, huh, although I filmed a lot of cats across the country, the lions are the one big cat that I still have never gone and filmed. There's a good population of lions in Gir National Park in Western India. It's a great conservation success story. Their numbers went up from less than a dozen to now close to 600 animals, spread out across 20,000 square kilometers in Western India. And sometime soon, I definitely do plan to go and visit Gir and find these cats to film. They're not very difficult to find because the area that they're in, it's a national as a wildlife sanctuary, a national park. It's only about 500 or so square kilometers, so they're found in that one area. But now that the lion numbers are much more, um, they are more easy to find in and around that landscape. So, how many species of cats are there in India? 15. So 15 species. That's four of the big cats and 11 of the small cats, or actually 10 of the small cats. And then there's that one special, unique cat that's neither a big cat nor a small cat. It's the clouded leopard. It's really the evolutionary link between the big cats and the small cats. And the clouded leopard holds a very special place in my own story. In 2011, I worked with wildlife veterinary friends of mine at the Wildlife Trust of India, and they rehabilitated these tiny orphaned cubs back into the wild. And I spent a good part of a year filming them as they were released back in the wild. And although I had filmed them and made a documentary for National Geographic called Return of the Clouded Leopards, I had always wanted to find and film or photograph these cats in the wild. And just 2 years ago, I did just that. I worked with a researcher, Priya Singh, who's a wildlife biologist, and she spent a good amount of time working in northeastern India, set out over 150 camera traps, and found suitable habitat for clouded leopards in the wild. And later that year, we went in there and set up the handful of camera traps that we had for our filming purpose. And over the course of 3 months, we managed to get some gorgeous images of clouded leopards in the wild. So that was an absolute dream come true project. And to work very closely with these animals, to be able to be with them and then actually see them being returned to the wild, and then a couple of years later going and finding them, not the same animals, not the same individuals, but a completely different wild population of them, was an absolute dream come true. And we were very happy to get pictures of clouded leopards in the wild. Yeah. Ah, that's an interesting question from Santosh about the Pogium cat. So the BBC's Mountains of the Monsoon documentary was a journey to look for this mysterious feline called a Pogian. It's called the ghost cat. It's an unidentified species or an unidentified individual. We set lots of camera traps for that particular one, but in the end, we never saw or found the cat, and the camera traps didn't get them either. So that was unfortunate. Yeah. We did get a few shots of the golden cat from northeastern India, but it's too difficult to make a full story of cats. If it's just a random shot here or there, we can't really tell an entire story. So, golden cats, we did manage to get them, but not enough to tell the whole story about them. And so, right now, one of the cats that we are focusing on is the current heartthrob of the wildlife photographer community. It's the black panther. And recently, I saw the black panther about 5 years ago here in Kabini in southern India. And I was sitting on a tree during the rains, and we watched it for almost 2 hours. And he's still around. He's now a very dominant leopard and a very different, a very unique animal. He's a melanistic panther. A panther and a leopard are there two words for the same cat. It's an interchangeable word, and we call it the black panther. And trying to find him is really worse than looking for a needle in a haystack. It's very, very hard to find. He has his own routine, and hopefully, after things settle down here and we are out of lockdown, we can go back and try to film this very special animal in the forests of southern India. Yeah. So the cat that gave me the worst nightmares, or the cat that was almost nearly impossible to film, was one of the most common of the cats, the ancestor of our domestic cat. It's the Asiatic wild cat. It took us nearly 6 weeks before we could actually film this cat. And I drove uh, all the way from here to central India to northern India, and just kept looking for signs of this cat. And we finally, our researcher found out that a Facebook post about this one bird watcher who had seen um, Asiatic wildcat uh, hunt. Was it a gray jungle fowl or a partridge? A gray partridge. Yeah, he had just shot that on his camera, and Facebook really helped us nail down the location for that one particular cat. And then we changed our entire story and we went looking for that one particular cat. And over the next week, we were able to film this cat using IR lights. And the reason we use IR lights is it's not because it's because the animals don't quite see them, and we can't see IR either. So we need all kinds of specialist filming gear sometimes to film these cats, many of which come out only at night. And if you put a white light on it, they might just scamper away. So the first day we filmed the wildcat with IR lights, and he was absolutely unperturbed, had no problem with us being there. So the next day we put on some white lights, and he was again totally unperturbed and went about his business looking for insects and things to eat. And we had a great time filming the wildcat for the next couple of days. But one of the most elusive and shy cats was the fishing cat. We made several attempts to look for fishing cats. They're found, they have a fairly wide range, but the population we were looking for is right outside the city of Kolkata. It's a bustling city, and in that landscape, there are a lot of ponds that people create to grow fish in them. And every day, these fishing cats come in into this human dominated landscape and they go hunt fish in the ponds created by humans in their backyard. And so people obviously don't like fishing cats because they want to protect their fish, and the cats come and get them every other day. Um, so to try to film fishing cats, it was almost impossible because they were very shy. The first time we tried to film them, our entire attempt failed. It rained. The cats never came in, and so we tried again 2 months later, and we set up IR lights all along the bank, the outer bank of the pond. And 2 in the morning, this one very habitual cat came into the frame, worked its way along the bank, and he kept diving in to catch fish. And of course, he was very, very unsuccessful, which made for great television because he kept jumping in the water, made a big splash, came back out, and he finally found a nice big vantage point up on the roots of a coconut tree. And from there, this one fishing cat just scanned the water, and when he saw a fish coming up, that's when he jumped in, grabbed a fish, and hopped out. Um, so that was very fulfilling to actually finally get a shot of a fishing cat actually catching fish. It's good when they live up to their name. Yeah. Let's see. So, what am I working on now? Well, at the moment, just sitting, working on trying to get some bats on camera. But apart from that, we're working on a couple of projects which I can't really talk about at the moment. But we are going to be heading back up into the mountains, into the Western Ghats, into the Himalaya. And one of the my special places is the Eastern Himalaya, which is um, which is where I spent about 5 years of my life working on a book called Himalaya Mountains of Life. And that book also led to several film projects, and it's currently part of my National Geographic Fellowship, where I'll be going up one of the valleys, the Siang Valley, all the way to the border of Tibet. And that's one of the places where it's one of the most unexplored frontiers of India. There's many new species that are yet to be discovered. So we're at the point where we're not even looking at behavior. We're just trying to find and put names for these species. And it'll still be a while before we can observe them long enough to actually um, find out their behavior. But that's really the cool part about looking for these animals. It's you find a new species, that's exciting enough. And then if you find new behavior, that's even more exciting. And that's what I'm looking forward to doing. So I hope all of you have had a wonderful time at this Earth Live lesson session, and tune in for more. There should be many more interesting talks coming up. Thanks, Lizzie, for having me here. And I shall be signing out now. Thank you all for your questions.